Yeah, I used to be part of Generalist World in the early days, but once it started being paid, I'm like, that's not the biggest priority for me. So hopefully, I've been seeing all the emails. Glad the community's been growing and vibrant. So good to see you. I'll go ahead and screen share and kick things off. Okay. Yep. How to engineer a genius-centric career. So just to give you a little bit of an intro for myself, my career in emojis. I first actually started out in nonprofit. I used to work a lot with churches and soup kitchens and homeless shelters. Got tired of not having money, and then I went to flip houses. I flipped houses for about 4 years in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Much different world. Got tired of that kind of culture, learned a lot, and then I ended up starting a education company for teens. So all very wildly different things. Ran that for 2 years, realized it was a really hard business, and the pandemic was just around the corner. So glad that I ended up winding that down. Ended up finally getting into tech for a couple of years, and then did that for about 2 years. And now I'm finally nomadic, traveling around the world and just working on Genius of You, which most of you should have already experienced or at least gotten a glimpse of. So the whole point is that, yeah, I understand the generalist journey, and I've had to think a lot and very deeply about what drives me and how to approach reinventing myself. And so that's a lot of the backdrop that does go into the assessment and also this workshop today. And yeah, the intent is for this to be interactive. So at any point, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer any. I would just say try to keep the questions more generalizable, like helpful to everyone, as opposed to like your specific use case. If you have specific use case questions for yourself, I would suggest saving that till the very end. I'm happy to stay around an extra, maybe like an extra 10, 15 minutes to answer those kinds of questions. But yeah, that's just some intro. All right, so from here, our roadmap today, yeah, pretty straightforward. I'm going to start off with a framework for career design. Oops, just to give you a quick peek. And then we're going to talk about Genius, which is the whole premise of this. And then, as mentioned, I'll go through everyone who submitted their results on that form. I'll actually go through everyone's results. We had about 15 people submit, and we'll just go use that as an example to better understand the Genius frameworks, as well as give everyone just a little bit personalized insights around their scores. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there are, please feel free to ask questions along the way, but we will have dedicated time at the end because there are usually always questions. And then in terms of, we'll talk about some light ways to implement because, yes, this is only an hour. I'm not going to be able to feasibly show everyone in their individual use case how to reinvent their career in the span of an hour. That'd be quite impossible, but at least if I can give you the right direction and starting point, hopefully that's the win. All right, so without further ado, any questions before we dive into it? Just give a brief chance for that. Okay, if not, we'll dive in. Okay, so framework for career design. Ikigai is the concept we'll start with. Ikigai is a Japanese concept for a reason for being. Many of you may have already heard of this, but for those who have not, there's basically 4 components to it. The first is talking about what you love. Second is about what the world needs. Third is what you can get paid for. And lastly, it's what are you good at, right? And so for most of us in careers, we have found things that we can get paid for. We've probably gotten good at it over the years. The world has some various need for it. Usually the missing component is, do we actually enjoy it? And so fast forwarding a little bit, these are kind of the intersections of these Venn diagrams. Yeah, and in theory, if you find all 4, something that has all 4 of these, you find your supposed Ikigai. And so for the purposes of this conversation, really what we'll just be focusing on is what you're good at and what you love. And according to this framework, they call that passion. And I'm basically co-opting this and calling this genius because it just, passion is such a loaded word in the career space. It's getting so muffled and it's too fuzzy. And so I'm trying to make it more concrete and bring more definition to it. So from there, What is genius? So we, as explained in the previous thing, but to blow it up into a bit to friendly 2x2. So genius is on one component, stuff that you're good at, and then stuff you're not good at as a vector. And secondly, stuff you don't enjoy and stuff you do enjoy. Right. And so some of you might have also heard of the term zone of genius. That's by Gay Hendricks. He wrote a book in the 90s called The Big Leap, and he explains these 4 categories that I'm about to lay onto the zone of incompetence, where it's stuff that you're not good at and stuff that you don't enjoy. That's zone of incompetence. Zone of competence is maybe you're just a little bit better, but still generally don't enjoy that much. And then zone of excellence, which most of us who are further down their careers have a lot of, where we're really good at certain things, but has not making a strong commentary on whether we enjoy it a lot. And the last section is zone of genius, where you both enjoy it and you're really good at it. And I'm adding this new category here, which is to be zone of genius, because there's stuff that you enjoy, but maybe you're not that good at. And the current zone of genius conversation doesn't really factor for that. And so, but that's a real factor in how you can end up designing a career in the long run. Right? Any questions about this? Okay, pretty straightforward. So the summary is genius equals high skill, high enjoyment. That's the whole point. And so why is enjoyment even a thesis of all this, right? So when you enjoy something, it'll feel effortless. It's easier to have more attention to detail. It's easier to be more engaged. It's easier to get lost in the doing. It's not going to feel like work as much. There's therefore less of a need to recover from it. And it's easier to become really good at the thing. And that's really the whole point. All of this is really the whole point of why did I build a whole website, a whole assessment around this, is because if you can identify what you enjoy, basically it's almost like free productivity, right? No one has to kind of hold you accountable to do things you enjoy, right? Because you're already incentivized to do it intrinsically. Point. Yeah, so the bold face is, yes, it's really easy to become good at things. So even if you enjoy a thing and aren't competent from it, you have an inherent advantage to become really good at it because you inherently enjoy it. Right? So following the breadcrumbs of enjoyment is the most effortless path to mastery. That's the whole point. So this is most relevant for people who, like kind of in the graph right here, is if you have a lot of stuff in the 2B zone of genius where it's like, oh, I have this side hobby that I'm casually interested in, but I haven't put that many years into it. That's kind of the most relevant point there for those people where it's like, hey, down the road, if you continue investing in that, that becomes a really viable point to jump off of when it comes to career, right? Because most of us are, I'm going to guess that more people than not are here and have a lot more zones of excellence rather than things that are zones of genius. All right. So obvious question is, how does enjoyment tie into career design? How do we connect that dot? So brief framework, there's 3 parts. The first part is just awareness. If you don't know what you enjoy, then it's really hard to connect that concrete dot into something, a career or job that you can actually actualize. The second is, like I mentioned, there's 2 dimensions, right? There's enjoyment and then competence, right? So the first step is awareness around what you enjoy, but the second is inventorying, well, what am I already good at? What are things that I enjoy and am not good at? And then what are things I enjoy and am good at? So there's 2 components. And then once you answer those questions, you just start playing around what you want, right? So you can bet on a genius now when you are good at the thing and enjoy it. And if you're enjoy a thing but not good at yet, then the whole point is to develop it more, and then you can bet on it in a few years. Right. And so for the purposes of this conversation, this workshop, really what we're trying to focus on in just now is really around awareness. The whole purpose of the assessment is around creating awareness around it. And the more aware that you are, then at least that informs the foundation to eventually plan around what you actually want. All right. So from here, we're going to dive into the hot seat. Are there any questions about anything that I've gone through before we dive into the live review of people's results?
Yeah, I've got a question.
All right.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So this, how do I say this? If you look at the two models, so Ikigai and this one, what if you could explain it in in simple terms? What is fundamentally the difference? That's not really clear to me. It seems like the same model, but with different words.
Yeah, I don't think I'm saying it's a different model. I'm saying Zone of Genius is very compatible with the Ikigai framework. Uh,
Okay.
and I'm saying that the premise of what I'm trying to do here is really focus on the love, what you love component and what you are good at component. I'm trying to create more connection there and
More.
awareness
Okay.
there
Got it.
because I feel like that's where most conversations aren't held, at least in the corporate space. Cool, cool, cool. All right, and I do want to answer one of the core questions someone answered and asked in the very beginning around how did this assessment come about? So basically, I did 300 user interviews, and in those 300 user interviews, I collected 8 stories from people's lives. So these are all qualitative. And then after I collected 300 of them, so 8 stories, 300 people, that's 2,400 data points. And from those 2,400 data points, that's where I distilled the geniuses that you all see. And basically all the most of the questions were basically directly informed from those user interviews. So you're basically looking at what is the population out there actually saying about what they enjoy in their lives, and what are the themes that arise, and therefore what are the genius categories that have risen. And so that's the backdrop of how the assessment came about. Okay, so from here, we're going to dive into the results. Okay. So what I like to start with, let me zoom in a little bit, is everyone's one-liners. But I don't know why we're saying. I don't know if I said a joke. Hopefully that was an accident. Okay. I've listed, so these are everyone's submitted names. So if you submitted your name, it's because you were okay with your name being known. So some people put unknown. But in this section, I'd like to go one by one. And if you are actually in the room or in this call, I'd love for you to just chime in. Does this resonate? The intention of this one-liner is, I don't know you at all. All I know are the 2 scores that you have. And this is the essence, like the spikes of what I'm seeing in your results and where I think you get the most enjoyment. And so, yeah, if Ang is here, I would love to hear whether this resonates for you or not. Feel free to unmute, throw in the chat. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people, but if you throw in the chat what resonates, that would be helpful. And then maybe if you raise your hand in the chat, that might be a more organized way to do it.
I don't think Angie's here. Haven't seen her, but Luciana is here. So feel free to unmute yourself, Luciana, if you want to be on the hot seat.
Hello.
Okay, Luciana. Yeah, super helper. You're the super helper. Does that resonate? Super people.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah.
Great.
I love doing personality tests, by the way. So as soon as I got the results, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like me.
Nice. Yeah. So basically, after this section, what I'll do is I'll go into everyone's actual numbers and explain how I came up with the one-liner. And that would be basically a practical way to help everyone on board and do what do all these geniuses mean and how do they collide together. That'd be the intention. Okay. Curious if Andrew is here. I know Andrea just chimed in. She's here, but eating. Is Andrew here? I'm curious what you think about yours. Okay, if Andrew's not here. Andrea, I don't know if you have a chance to see this even though you're eating. My one-liner for you is can do anything, everything in its own timing.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, sorry, just eating some dinner. I love this. Thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what you meant around in its own timing. That's the only bit that didn't quite make sense to me.
In its own timing is because of your score on somatic, where there's still an intuitive check inside for yourself, a judgment call of like, just because I can do anything doesn't mean I'm going to do it all now. So that's the layer of you still have a layer of intuitive judgment as to when and why you do a thing.
Amazing. I feel like you might have been speaking to my therapist. That's great. Thank you so much.
Great. I haven't gotten that piece of feedback before, but I'll take it. Okay. Nola or Caitlin, curious if you're in the mix, would like to chime in on either of these. Okay. If not, Vera or Carl, curious if you can chime in on these.
Yep, it's pretty accurate. One of my slogans is making work more human. So it definitely was another piece of the puzzle, and indeed the infinite ideator. Yeah, that's if you look at my test, it's literally only that. So yeah.
Sounds good. All right, Christina or Elizabeth.
I'm here. Beth, yeah, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yes, it resonates. I'm curious as to what super versus just regular would be.
Sure.
And I'm also admittedly a little surprised that it's less multi-dimensional, that it's pretty much one topic. That surprises me.
Yes, and again, I will go into all the scores to explain how I arrived to that. This is because it's a one-liner. It's by definition going to lose some granularity.
Yep. Not granularity, just I'm curious because both of those points, mentor and developing people, seem to be kind of the same thing. That's why I was curious.
Okay, makes sense. And then yeah, Ryan or Greg, curious if you're in here, would like to chime in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so this is definitely in the right direction in the sense of being very living inside my head and wanting to think about any situation and always coming up with ideas. Yeah, so it pretty much hits it directionally, very close.
Okay, great to hear.
I would.
I can.
I'm actually might be an anomaly. I guess I never really saw myself that way as someone with an answer for every challenge or situation. Is there like some more context to that?
Yeah, that'll be the intention of the next section where I dive into the actual numbers to explain my rationale for that as a one-liner. Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. So I have one questionable hit rate here. Okay. Glad for most people resonated. Okay. So,
I resonated as well. My speaker wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I resonate. And if I could do that all day long, it wouldn't be work. And I think the challenge with that statement to me that like kind of made my heart sink a little bit is like that's all on the on the idea side and like the community side and like speaks very little to like execution, and that showed up in my scores, and that is a little rough on my ego.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's actually a great segue. Is I should have put my scores on this as well, but basically I'm also a negative executor as well. Like I have like -9 on executor. And so I think some people, I would imagine most people have questions around that. But again, as a reminder, this whole assessment is around enjoyment, not competence, right? So just because you score negative on it doesn't actually mean that you're not good at it. It just means it costs more effort for you, right? So this is my 4th company. You guys saw in the intro. I've done a lot of things. How was it that I've been able to do like flip houses and run an education company for teens when I am a negative executor, right? So it's not talking about competence. It's talking about the amount of conscious energy and effort in order to operate there costs more for you in that domain. So that's what the commentary is. For anyone that has a low score in anything, that is the commentary that is being made. It just means it just needs to be a really specific environment situation for you to pull out that hat. It's not saying you're not capable of it, or it's not even saying you're not good at it. It's just saying it costs a lot. That's the whole premise. Yeah, Etchi, if you don't mind helping Kristen in terms of where they can share the results, that would be helpful. One, and then just one broad statistic. So out of maybe 300-400 people that have taken the assessment, executor is actually someone leading with executor as their highest genius is actually the rarest category. I think it's less than 8% of people lead with executor. Vast. So you're going to see in all the stores that, that not a lot of people, even in this room, even though we're all generalists, not a lot of people actually lead with executor. So a lot of us are in our zones of excellence when it comes to executing rather than in our zone of genius. Okay, so everyone's scores are here. And now I'm going to go through how I arrived at everyone. So Ange wasn't here, so I'll skip her for now. But Luciana, so it was super people helper. So basically what I'm looking at is presence and coach as the leaders here. Impact on others is what, obviously there's the definitions right here. So coach being the strongest, and then supporter being the second strongest. That basically shouts to me like this is a very practical leaning in to support people. And so because it's kind of like a double whammy, both assessments are basically saying the same thing. How can we help people? There's a decent score on the revealer side, which is like, how do I point out gaps and support? To me, that just boils down to, hey, if you spend a lot of time helping people, you're probably going to get a lot of enjoyment. So it's very straightforward. Some people have more unidirectional spikes where they like beeline on one particular thing, and that's where they get a lot of enjoyment. And there's other people that they enjoy like 5 or 6 different things similarly or somewhat equally, and that's just how they work. That's okay. It just means there's just different trade-offs that come with it. Okay, and then I think Andrea was here. Can do everything in its own timing. So let's look at Andrea for a sec. So Andrea, case in point, she's got 4 scores that are very similar. She's got a 7, 7, 6, 6, right? So Alchemist is really about breadth, as you can see it here, breadth of learning. Superhuman is about depth, pursuit of challenge, pushing limits. So going deep. So when you have Alchemist and Superman, it's like, I want to do a lot and I want to get really deep in the thing. And then Deconstructor is really about frameworks and applying them. Somatic is about intuition. So when you combine that, there's a belief that there's someone that wants to do a lot of things, interested in a lot, wants to go deep in a lot of it, and has this intuitive approach as well, this like thinking approach too. So it's, I can do a lot, I can do everything, and there's still intuition that's guiding. And so that just this alone already speaks to a lot of the whole statement. So can't do anything in its own timing. Looking over to the work side. So Dreamer is very high as the highest. So this is even more so I can do anything. This is like, I can even do things that don't even exist yet. And this like Dreamer is probably the most entrepreneurial of the geniuses, where just seeing blue sky possibilities, greenfield possibilities, that just is more enjoyable, right? So that's where that comes from. Okay, and then, okay, Vera, team first, ideator, because Vera was here. So let's look at Vera. So yeah, Infinite Ideator is very much on this Alchemist, where so much breadth of learning, it's leading by a large mile. Basically nothing even really comes close. So that's where it stands out on the genius side. And then on the work side, it's innovator and supporter. So infinite ideas and wanting to devote that energy, a lot of energy to supporting people. So it's ideas and people and mash them together. It's, yeah. Team first. So how do I support people? And then infinite idea. Those are the loudest components based off of that. Okay. And then I believe it's Ryan and Greg. So, oh wait, I think Beth. Yeah, Beth. Super mentor, developer of people. So let's go to Beth. So Beth right here on one component is presence, which is about experiencing subtle emotions, and then coach is impact on others. So these one high level concept here that if you read the Genius results, like the full report, you would know that these three geniuses, present, somatic, and coach, are the social leaning geniuses. So if you score high on these, that means you're more around the people side of things. You get more inherent enjoyment from that. Whereas if you score high on these four, alchemist, superhuman, artisan, deconstructor, these are more the solitude leaning geniuses, where if you score high on these, you're more likely to be okay with being inside your own head, in your own room, just tinkering, learning, creating, and not really necessarily needing to interact with other people, because these can be done on your own. So that's just a high level note for people to help understand the context of your scores. So going back to Beth, so very people to very feely, and then again, very even scores. There's 5 scores that are all relatively high, but the loudest is helping people. These are all 2 helping people. So there's both ideation, there's both pointing out gaps, and then there's this level of discernment with the assessor. So basically there's like a Swiss Army knifeness to Beth's capacity to really ultimately have an impact on others. So I would imagine, based off these scores, Beth is devoting a lot of her work energy, like if it can impact people, whether it's ideating, pointing out gaps, her discernment, she's going to use that to help people in some kind of way, whether it's her team or with customers. So I kind of just distilled it, made it simple, and just said, hey, people mentor, developer of people, because so much of the enjoyment is coming from that. Okay. And then it's going to Ryan, people-centric, infinite idea and vision. Ryan's right here. So Ryan is both high in alchemist and present. So this is where the ideation comes from, where your exposure to a lot of things, tuned into the emotional side of things. And then dreamer and innovator. So this is very entrepreneurial vision. Innovator is, hey, how are we solving immediate things? And then how are we supporting people with it? How do I practically step in? So those are the components of that. So people-centric, want to support people, and there's ideas and vision. Right? So that's where that's where the energy and enjoyment comes from. It's not commentary on whether you're capable or not, or competent or not. And then lastly, we'll go to Greg, wise owl, answer for every challenge and situation. Greg, so we have alchemist and deconstructor. So alchemist is, again, about the breadth, and deconstructor is basically how we connect dots. What's the framework to organize all this? So when I see alchemist and deconstructor together, it's someone who's like read a lot, exposed a lot, and somehow ties it all into something useful for people. And then when we look at the work side, we have innovator, dreamer, and assessor. So I'm like, you have all this knowledge, you have this capacity that enjoys taking a step back to discern and evaluate, read the situation, and you have a shit ton of ideas. So in my mind, this is a person that has this wise owl energy of been there, done that, can see what's happening and tell people what to do about it, what's happening, how they can make something useful out of the situation, problem solve through it, whether it's now or the future. So that's where that comes from. Answer for every challenge. All right. So Beth's in the comments. I care so much about impact, but my discernment can make them uncomfortable in this, not like me or see me as caring. Yeah. So I am actually working on the results page that's actually twice as long for every single genius. And one of the aspects of that eagerness and the enjoyment in coach is actually the over-eagerness and the presumption around, like almost like giving unsolicited advice or helping people even before they consent to it, not acknowledging the value someone places on you before you want to help them. So yeah, that's a lesson learned, and everyone will get emails once that component launches. Cool. Anyone? Yeah. Since I've done a lot of talking, any open questions that come up as we're kind of looking at the framework right now? Very one-dimensional. Yes. So that is a very broad. Yeah, that's both personal and broad. But I would suggest if you have these kinds of questions, feel free to book time with me. At the very end, I'm going to offer a link for everyone in the community to book a one-on-one call with me, totally for free, for 20 minutes. We can talk about anything in your situation. But yeah, part of the new results that will launch in the next 2 weeks includes an entire section around every genius will have a description around, hey, if you score low on this, what can you do about it? So absolutely, you can devote energy to, I guess, work on a growth area. But again, this is around enjoyment. So I'm not making a commentary around competence. You can score low on a thing and still be very competent around it. And then a logical question that some people ask is, oh, can my scores really drastically change? I think the jury is still out on that. Currently, the way the assessment is set up, it's basically a snapshot of your current reality. I've taken the assessment 4 times over the last 2 years, and my deconstructor has always been up on the top. My second and third ones have shifted a few times, but it's never my inherent enjoyment of my present score. My present score is negative. My inherent enjoyment around that hasn't changed, even though I've put in a lot of work to understand emotions and tune in emotionally, taken a bunch of courses around that. I've taken Stanford's Touchy-Feely, NBC, all these other authentic relating courses, but it still costs a lot of energy for me. So yeah. Any other questions?
I have a quick one. When it comes to all of these kind of areas, something that kept coming up to me when I was taking the assessment, and then just kind of listening to the explanations of them.
Yeah.
Being that I'm very much neurodivergent and ADHD, I feel like some of these can be fluid in my day to day. I wonder if you had any insight as to like some days I would say that I'm like probably a 9 in a coach, but then sometimes I'm a negative, would be a negative 8. So like I guess like does the general like secret sauce create just kind of an average plane of where you're at rather than just kind of how I happened to be feeling that day when I took the assessment?
Yeah, so this goes into the errors and limitations of all personality tests. What is the mindset of the person taking the assessment, and what is the instruction the creators of the assessment are giving in terms of how to take the assessment. So on that particular point, yeah, if you're only answering through the lens of how am I feeling today, then of course your answers are going to reflect today and not reflect maybe where you'll be tomorrow. So if you change the frame of how you answer, of like, you know what, generally speaking, on average, how do I feel about the answer to this question? That might give you more like a broad-tailed, kind of long-tailed, generalizable answer. That's one aspect. That's one way you can address it. The other way you can address it is there's a reason why this assessment is actually retakeable. You can actually retake it as many times as you want. There's no limitation on it. It's free. You can just retake it and it'll just show you a new instance of that score. So like maybe just run with that. I don't know. I don't deeply understand the intersectionality of neurodivergence and my assessment too well, because I don't know. I haven't had that conversation with many people. So I think for now, it's just flexible enough. So maybe just roll with it. Feel free to book a one-on-one with me and we can talk more in depth about it. But yeah, it's largely unexplored territory for me. So I'm happy to incorporate your feedback if it ends up that it's not really in service of how you currently operate.
Yeah, I think I took the approach that you mentioned, and it's just kind of zoomed out and looked at like in general. But I do think that would be a curious experiment to like run it over a couple month period and just see how things change.
Yeah.
Or even like a weekly, just to see how I feel in that day about how I feel overall. Because that's the challenge I have often with just my whole, where I put myself into where I think I have my genius is, and like my view of my overall view can change every hour sometimes. So I think that's an interesting area. But I think it definitely got me in the right. It's got me in the right ballpark, and it started more questions than it did answers, which is a good thing. I think that's kind of the goal.
Yeah. So even in that case, like let's say you take it 7 days in a row, and every single day you have a different lead genius. Let's just take that as an extreme hypothetical. Even in that environment, it's like functionally what's happening is you actually have high enjoyment across all the geniuses. And now we have that use case that I mentioned earlier, where some people, they score very similarly across all their geniuses, and they just have a different set of challenges, which is I have many hats that I want to wear that I all enjoy, but I enjoy at different times. And so now the question is, what is my relationship with how I relate to those hats, right? So for us kind of one-trick ponies like myself, where I'm just deconstructor all the way, life is straightforward for me. I don't have to think about the decision-making around which hat do I want to wear today? Like every day, I just want to wear my deconstructor hat. It's very simple for me. And it's, of course, comes with trade-offs, meaning there's other geniuses I inherently don't enjoy and will unlikely ever enjoy. And so that's just the trade-off. And in your case, it's you have many hats and you get to decide your meta process, your skill is for today. How do I determine which hat do I want to wear? What is alive for me today? And how can I build a life that respects and that kind of being? And that's just a different question, a challenge, again, with different trade-offs, right? Because it gives you versatility, but it also gives you a lot of choice. And for a lot of people, that creates a lot of paralysis, right? So if you're able to build a really good relationship there, then you should be golden. But that's, of course, much easier said than done.
Feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So one thing I do want to comment on is this assessment is almost like trying to give you understanding of the backdrop category, right? Like if any of you have done some of the zone of genius assessment exercises elsewhere on the internet, like one example is like go through your calendar over the past week and like log everything that you've ever done and then like evaluate, did I get energy from this or not? And so that's very concrete and that's super useful. I would highly recommend doing that. But that only gives you like activity specific things. So now you're like, oh, like I love taking notes during meetings, or like I love like doing interviews with possible candidates. These are very specific, but it doesn't comment to like what's the thing behind it that you enjoy that is more broadly applicable. And that's the purpose of this assessment of, like, for example, I really like interviewing. And if I only did that exercise of, oh, I really like interviewing, let's just stick with interviewing. But knowing my genius results, being a deconstructor, I now have better insight to say, oh, the reason why I like interviewing is because I have this deconstructed framework around like human behavior and human change and competence. And my deconstructor completely lights up when I interview. If you score high on presence, you might realize that you like interviewing, same behavior, but totally different reason. You might realize it's because the connection that you create with the person is so salient, right? If you score high on alchemist, and you end up liking interviewing, it might be because you love the variety of people's backgrounds and people's stories and motivations, and that's so compelling, and you get that one-on-one in an interview context, right? So same activity, but there could be an entirely different suite of things that causes that enjoyment, right? So that's really the intention of the assessment, is it gives you the broad level category of why you're interested in a thing, what gives you enjoyment. And it is not complete, right? This is just the beginning process of, like I said, the awareness game. Right now you're aware of the broad thing. Okay. Any questions before we dive into next steps? Because we have like 5 minutes of extra buffer right at this point. Okay. All right, let's move on. So we just did this hot seat review. Takeaways and reminders. This assessment is about enjoyment, not competence. So don't fret too much about your negative scores. just understand, hey, this is just how I'm wired, and that's okay. Like, I could be really good at it, just costs me energy. Like I just mentioned, it sheds light on the broad category behind specific activities, right? I can love interviewing, but the reason, the broad category behind it could be different based off of my genius. And ultimately, people can enjoy things you dread, right? If we go back to the all dreaded executor for so many of us are red or white here, so kind of on the bottom tier of things. And so literally only one person who is unknown that leads with, basically it's like I don't even know if this is a real result. But yeah, some people can enjoy it. My VA actually specifically, she scores a 17 on executor, and I love her for it. She scores low on the innovation and the dreamer. She just wants me to give her ideas to do, right? So there are literally people out there that exist. It is the rarest category. It is, as a juicy hint, it is how I hire VAs as well, where I put all my virtual assistants through both assessments. It gives me really good insight as to where are they naturally heading, because I'm so low on executor. I want to find people who are high executors. So yeah, you can apply this both into your current teams as well, where if you want to analyze your team, have your team go through it. You guys can have an internal discussion around like how you're balanced in that way. And like, if no one's a strong executor, then basically it costs everyone energy to do that. And that's helpful to know. And yes, I'm happy to talk more if you as a team want to go through this assessment. I do kind of that setup for people, and we can talk about it separately. Yeah, so those are some reminders, and then this is a recap of like, how does this tie in? Like, we're talking about genius-centric design. Like, going back to that particular point, we basically we're trying to cover this step of awareness, of hopefully seeing your results and us going over these one-liners. You have a bit more awareness on what you enjoy. These are other steps that we cannot cover over this call, but these are other steps that you could probably do and should do if you're serious about designing a career around this. And again, we can cover this more in a one-on-one context. And as a reminder, this is the original frame that we're talking about, where, hey, most of us have a lot of zones of excellence, some zones of competence. And if we're trying to design a genius-centric career, there may be some of the things that we have in our toolbox, our skill set, that are to be zones of genius. Like, we enjoy it, but we're not yet good at it yet. Okay, and so get more practical. 4 approaches to action your scores. This is not exhaustive, and this is not going to be complete, but there are ideas and starting points. One is negotiate your current work situation around your geniuses. So if you score high in coach, maybe it's thinking about, okay, how can I create that feedback loop of human to human impact, where I know the impact that I have on someone. If you're high on deconstructor, there's a lot of that, which is, how do I create more context where the frameworks that are relevant to me that I've deconstructed have more permission to show up in the work context that I have. Those are just examples. And just having a frank conversation with your manager, or maybe you are the boss. So if you're the boss, if you're the founder, then maybe you can reshift your work. Look elsewhere. Of course, for a lot of people, there's limitations in your current context. Not the greatest managers, not the most friendly work environments. So of course, looking elsewhere needs to be part of that picture. And then last, related to looking elsewhere, is build your own sandbox. So of course, this can be through side hustle or starting your own company. Yeah, at the end of the day, sometimes you got to start your own thing, because the world is not always going to bend to your asks, and you have other people who have competing desires and incentives. So sometimes you got to just do your own thing. Develop your to-be geniuses. So like I mentioned, things that you're not yet competent in, but enjoy. Create regular time for that. So build a weekly cadence where you invest time in that. I have a weekly co-writing call. I used to have a weekly co-writing call, because writing was a way to develop my deconstructor. And so I would make sure that I did that every single week. And I did that for a few years with friends. And okay. The last way to get support on this is, like I mentioned, please book one-on-one time with me if you want to dive deeper. It's totally free. We can talk about the application of your results in both a personal and professional context. We can talk about designing learning containers for the aspects of the to be geniuses, things that you enjoy but not good at. And then we can just talk about alignment overall, whatever you want. We can talk about tactical guidance, my 5 reinventions, et cetera, et cetera. And you can book time with me here. This deck will be sent out, so I can drop this in the chat right now, and it will go out in the email. So that's the link to book time with me. You can use that right now. We do have, we're finishing early, so I'll just leave it open for some open Q&A before people sign off. Any questions?
Lots of chat on the chat function, which I love, especially about like burning out, different hats, changing seasons, and then maybe like having different life seasons, having different like results on the assessment, which I love it. Anyone wants to raise a question, feel free to unmute or like use the Q function. Yeah, Beth.
Hear it. What did you do to validate this? I know you said you did the interviews and then you extracted insights.
Mhm.
Is that your field of expertise? Did you get that validated by neutral market research experts? Or is this just kind of based on your confidence in your
The
experience?
most direct answer to this question is that I have 0 formal training in this entire world. I dropped out of college. I did study psych, but I didn't finish. Everything here is the litmus test in terms of how I designed is ultimately, is this useful? I've learned statistics casually on my own. I've, as mentioned in all my careers, like I've been doing leadership development. I've been in real estate and like working with teens. So like I've done a lot of personal growth. So those are the frames that inform how I design it. In all my user research and user feedback sessions, even pre, post, and even now, I still incorporate feedback around. So like when if someone has issues with the current frame of the assessment, I'm all ears. If someone has an academic background and wants to critique it, I'm all ears as well. Like, I think the thing that is most unique in terms of how I've approached it that I don't think any assessment is really doing is I actually go back and quantify the distribution of everyone's answers across every single question to see, is this question actually useful in separating people, right? Because everyone selects strongly disagree on a single question, like, or over half the population selects it. That's not a useful question, right? So I'm doing that level of quantitative analysis maybe on a like biannual basis to make sure, are these questions actually useful in creating a bell curve of distribution of humans? Because otherwise we're not separating anyone in any meaningful way. So that might be the most kind of rigor that I'm applying. But other than that, that's even not, I don't have an academic background in this. So that's the longer answer, long and short of it. Okay. I'm happy to stay on for the time that we're allotted and a little bit over. But the last favor I would love to ask from all of you is, please leave some feedback. I just dropped the link in the chat. There's only one required NPS-oriented question. That's 1 through 10. And then there's 2 optional qualitative questions. But yeah, I'll be around. Nancy, you got a question?
I'll just throw something out there while she's getting unmuted. I just wanted to say, I think this is really insightful and something I've been thinking about a long time. Being in that neuro space is like a lot of the things that came up are things that I feel like I get enjoyment doing and I can do, but I trust the results are actually like, if I can zoom out and look at the things that I actually like, get to an end of the day and feel really fulfilled. I think it's helpful in the sense of like seeing at a big picture level, like, yeah, I can do all those things, but I shouldn't do half of them. Like, I shouldn't focus on half of them when I'm working like with a client or doing a proposal for something, like just trying to be everything for everyone. I think it's a big challenge as a generalist and a big challenge as a neurodivergent generalist, is that like like, yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, no, I want to do that. And it's like, is it because I'm like stimming on it and I just really want to do it today, or is it something that it actually is career and growth focused? So
yes,
I think this is a super helpful tool, and I'm booking a call with you right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank you for it.
I think for people who have that similar functional challenge of like lots of options, how do I decide? One recommendation is developing a relationship with like body-based decision making, so more intuitive, more gut feel, because it just cuts through all the layers of pros and cons decision making. It's just like, okay, check in with my body. Like, do I feel a grounded yes around this? And it cuts through the emotion, it cuts through the logic. And I think developing that as a process, specifically for me, super helpful, because it's almost like a shortcut. But again, it takes time. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to chatting with you. Thanks for this.
Nancy, are you
okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I really appreciated that last comment interaction as well. That was quite engaging. Mine is really simple. I was just curious about how you came to label the assessment, and if you personally had any thoughts about, oh, should I use the word genius? Will people think this is an IQ test? Like, had you thought about any other terms, because your writing language is important, like awareness assessment or energy or enjoyment, or
the main reason why I stuck with genius is because that's where it came from, which is it was inspired by Gay Hendricks' work. So Gay is the one that popularized the term zone of genius, and yeah, I think there's been going traction around the phrase over the years. So I just decided to keep it, but my intention was, at least, can I create more granularity and understanding around it and awareness around it? Yeah, genius. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of association with IQ around that, but I guess I'm not worried about that distinction, because a lot of the people that I'm trying to target anyway are more in the personal growth space. And if you've been in the personal growth space, I make the assumption that you've already heard the phrase zone of genius and understand that separate definition. Yes, but you're right. I probably will encounter that challenge and feedback when I go more broad to the market, to people who aren't really in the personal development space. But I'm okay with it. In terms of the other question, in terms of how I came up with the categories, that was mostly functional, of when I was observing all the data and all the, I guess, themes that came up. I was just using a more intuitive process of like, what is a word that really captures the essence of what I'm seeing in this category? And that's how I came up with the buckets. And yeah, you might notice that these are pretty new buckets. There's not another framework that uses most of these buckets that I'm aware of, at least. And that's because it's based off an original premise, or I guess I don't think anyone else is doing something like this.
Super cool. My butter is a little bit freezing. That's why I'm taking some extra time on muting myself. But I mean, I don't know anyone, but I really enjoyed this session, and I'll definitely go back to my own results to like look over and then read everything more properly. So thank you, Brendan. That was so nice. And then huge shout out because I know that the work assessment is normally paid, but you gave us the specific link for this event, so that if you haven't done the assessments before, do it with the link came from the event emails, so that you can do that without paying. And yeah, book a call with Brandon if you're interested in following up. And in Slack, I'm quite curious about like continuing this conversation. So anyone want to share their results and talk about it, feel free. And thanks everyone for joining us. I'll be sharing the recording of this and the deck and all the links in the post event email as well.
Yes. And yeah, I'll stick around until she closes the room in case people have last minute questions.
Yeah, feel free, everyone. So I'm just gonna open this up so we can see everyone.
Oh yeah, the last note is the spreadsheet that we went over will also be part of the email. So you can kind of peruse in your own time. So for the people that did submit scores while we were talking, I will go back and add your one-liners as well, just because I want you guys to get that experience.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you. I'm quite curious about what Will Faisan's results will be. So I want to hear about them on Slack as well. Oh, thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you sometime next week. Hope to see you next week. It's International Generalist Day next week. So see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
See you.